Okay, for today it is Unit 11, Lesson 7. This is just a whole bunch of review, and I hope you know the difference between these two things. This one comes out to 4, and this one has 2 answers. Why? When you square root, what do you get in this one that you didn't have in this one? Absolute values on the x. And that causes you to get 2 answers. It's not because the square root of 81 is 2 things. The square root of 81 is just 9. But it's because the absolute values that you get 2 answers. X equals 9 and x equals negative 9. Okay, good. And this is just the definition of the official definition of the principal square root. And this is showing you that square root has an absolute value. And the absolute value is going to give you 2 things where one ends up being negative, one's positive. It's actually a little more complicated than that, but frankly, we don't need to spend time on that. We need to spend time on the new stuff for today. So this one can be done in your head. Number 1, don't say it, write it, turn it my way, and I'll tell you if you've got it. Yep. Just zoom in on the first one, please. Number 1. Yep. Set your brightness up high enough. Yep. So that I can actually read them. Yep. Don't use yellow. That should be illegal on that color background. Yes. Good. Okay. Yes. All right. So 27 is what this one came out to, because square root of 9 is 3. 3 to the third is 27. This one, also similarly easy. And this one, you just get through those 2 answers. Would you compare those 2 answers with the kid sitting next to you and see, give him time, don't show him the answers. Wait till he's done, and then you can check. Pausing while you try that. Okay, here's the quick answer. Square root of 25, 5. 5 to the third, 125. Negative means flip it. 1 over 125. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, the next one, 5th root of 32 is 2. 2 to the 4th is 16. Easy peasy. So let's move on to this kind. This first one here has to be rewritten. This does confuse a lot of people, but you need to know that that's x to a fraction power, and I don't know what over I don't know what, and it equals 516. Do you know where to put the 9 and where to put the 4? If you do, then you'd know how to solve it, because you'd put it to the reciprocal of that power. You know what I mean? You have to put it to the reciprocal power. Then you need a calculator. I would like you to grab a graphing calculator right now. You're going to use one all day today, because these are application questions. And that means for this part of the test, you'd have a calc. Remember how I said there's 2 parts to the test? One part is the with calc part. One part's the no calc part. So don't get spoiled by these and think, oh, all these fraction exponents, I'll just do them on the calculator. No. Some parts of the test, you have to be able to do them in your head. That's why we were practicing without the calc. But for your application ones, calcs will be allowed. All right, so would you please type in 516 power of, and then put in the right fraction. Hopefully you know what it is. And I want to warn you, if you do this wrong, 516 to the, I'm going to change the numbers, let's say 2/3 power. I know it's not that, but if you just type in 516 to the 2/3, do you get the calculator will think, put it to the second power first, because powers come before divide, and then divide by 3? And that's not what we want. We want it to put it to the 2/3. You need to put it in parentheses. If you have fraction powers, they got to go in parentheses, or your calculator will give you the wrong answer. Because it's going to say, yes, master, I will do this in the order you have trained me. Powers are first. And it will go 516 squared. And then what do you want me to do? Oh, divide by 3? Divide by 3. And it'll give you the wrong answer. Okay, so again, I know it's not 2/3. I'm just delaying the giving of this answer. All right, would you please compare this answer that you got? It should be a decimal, like 23.09 or whatever. Compare that decimal with the other kid, and maybe you did yours the opposite way. I'll pause while you give that a shot. Okay, to clarify, you should have said x to the, well, the roots go on the bottom, just like in plants. Remember me saying that a few times? The root part goes on the bottom. That's the root part. That goes on the bottom. So it starts as to the 9/4. Now I have to fix that. So I put it to the power of 4/9. Let me ask you, did you think about whether or not you should have a plus and minus answer? Because If you had divided by an even number right there and there, then you would have had two answers, but we did not. It's an odd. Hopefully you thought that through and said, oh, I don't need a plus minus because it's an odd denominator. Okay, that cancels that, and if you do this in a calculator, it gives you a decimal. What decimal did you get? 16.0. Raise your hand if you had 16.0 something or other. Okay, good. Then I think we're going to skip skip a few, skip a whole bunch of these up to here where we don't have a calculator again. You'll use the calc again in a minute, so just set it aside for now. And in your head, remember what negatives mean? It means flip it. But how can you flip a whole number? A whole number actually is a fraction. 5 is a fraction. It's 5 what? 5 firsts. 5 over 1. 5 divided by 1 is 5. But at least now you can see that when you flip it, you can say that means flip it. So I flip it and then square it, or square it and then flip it. It doesn't really matter if you think about it. It doesn't matter whether you square it first or flip it. It's all part of the same number, and so it won't matter. So anyway, 1 over 120, or sorry, 1 squared is 1, 25 is on the bottom, 1 over 25. All right, these should be so quick, you should be able to do this whole page in about 1 minute. Seriously. Okay, all the ones, there's no calculator for any of these. So you should be flying through this one, this one, this one, this one. These will take you 15 seconds each if you know what you're doing. Here you just got to remember to get the clump alone. That's the clump. Actually, wait. That's the clump. Get that clump alone first. Then you'll be able to finish it off in your head. These all come up to nice numbers in your head. I'm going to pause for a moment. Let me try those. So tell me what the first 5 are across the top there. 1/7, I agree. Let's see. You're squaring, which makes 9/16, then you're flipping 16/9. I agree. Next one. Cube root of 27, 3 to the 4th is like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And the cool thing about that one is that makes 9 and that makes 9, and you're right, 81. Next one. Cube root of 8 is 2. 2 to the 2nd is 4. That makes it flip 1/4. Awesome. And then how do I get this clump alone? Add 7. 3 equals 2x to the 1/3. Divide by 2. Now how do I get that x to the 1/3 to be alone? Cube it. Cube it. Final answer. 27/8 is correct. Next one, subtract 5 from both sides. 3x to the 3/4 equals 24. And then I'm going to divide by 3x to the 3/4 equals 8. To the 4/3. To the 4/3. Third root of 8 is 2. 2 to the 4th, 16. Raise your hand if you had 16 for that one. And save me some time. Help me with that last one. I bet it's extraneous, isn't it? When you got done solving it, you squared both sides and you blah, blah, blah. You got down to x equals what for an answer? 5/8. But when you put that in here, you end up getting a negative number. No, but they have been many times. Okay, so just be really careful because usually things that have square roots on both sides, when you put the thing back in, it doesn't actually work. So you write ext. Okay, and that's all I've got for you for those. Now I think we should jump into the homework for today. I think we're actually going to just go right to the homework. So I'm going to pause for a second while we find the homework worksheet. Okay, so I found the worksheet. It's 5.4 applications worksheet. Hope you've got it also. We're actually just going to start doing some homework problems together off this thing because there's enough on here that I feel like I can show you as we do your homework instead of just doing extra problems and then your homework. All right, so on this one, I need some kind of formula to stick this into. Can I remind you of the formula by writing it this way? Y equals, and I'm going to call it start because it depended on what the number was, you know. It was the starting number though, times like 2 to the x, but all of this is so variable, it really depends. Was it always a 2 in there? No. Sometimes it was like 1 plus a rate. Sometimes it was 1 minus a rate. Really kind of depends. So there's a good general form for your equations that you do that involve exponential growth or decay. All right, so now let's try to stick the numbers in from this problem and see if you know where to put them. If the start is on the right, what's on the left? What's over here? That's the end value. So, in this case, how much did the serial start at? 425. So put that here. How much should it end at? So put that over here. And do they tell us the rate? No, that's the point. Give the annual rate. They want us to figure out the rate. But they must have told us one more thing, because I can't do it if it's got two variables in it. 5. 5 goes where? The x. Good. Now, I will give you two options on how to solve this next part. You can use a calculator either way. You can first of all get the clump alone and do it that way, and that's a totally okay way. Or you can graph both sides and see where they cross. I've been hounding you about this way for so long because it works on so many places. Have you noticed? The reason I bring it up all the time is because it works all the time. Graph this side, graph that side. They're two separate y equals equations. Wherever they cross, that's your answer. Now, I know some of you aren't that comfortable with it, but I'm going to make you do it to see how it's actually kind of easy. Everybody, please type in y equals 5.5 on your calculator in the y equals screen. I'll pause for a second while we get that up. And here's how it would look. Y equals 5.5 and y equals 4.5 times 1 plus x. Notice I changed the r to an x because the calculator, you don't usually graph things with an r in them. You usually graph it with x because the calculator is expecting x for the variable. All right, so there, I've graphed both sides. And now how do I see where they cross? Well, I just hit graph. And if I can actually see the two lines crossing, which I can, then it's going to work. By the way, what if I couldn't see them crossing right now? Which part's probably off then? The window. The window settings can be changed to be much bigger numbers, and you can pretty much, if you put in big enough numbers, you can always see the two lines crossing. Now, why am I teaching you this? Why couldn't we just do it with, get the clump alone and divide by 4.25 on both sides and then put it to the 1/5 power? Because this way is awesome, because on any weird equation you don't even understand totally, it'll work. So like you get stuck on a tough equation on the ACT test. I hope some of you guys whip this out and go, oh yeah, I can graph both sides, see where they cross. Even if you don't even really totally understand how you're supposed to have solved it. If you graph both sides, see where they cross, it works. All right, so I'm going to hit second, calculate, and which of these choices do I want to see where they're crossing? Yes, intersect. Second, calculate, intersect is number 5. And this is in case, I think on one of your homework problems, you get two answers. You need to do one little step, and that's get close to where they cross. And then when you're close to it, you just hit enter, enter, enter. I know there's a technical reason for every one of the questions they're asking there, but it's so much simpler to just get close to where they cross and hit enter, enter, enter. Okay? Now, if they've got two answers, you got to get close to both of them and see where they cross. But I'll give you a hint. A lot of times when there's two answers, one of them is ridiculous in the real world. Like it's like, how long is the sled? And one of the answers comes out to 3.9 meters, which is pretty big, but possible. And the other one's -6 meters. And you're like, can't be a negative length sled. So you throw out, a lot of times, one of those two answers. So watch out for that too. That would be a what kind of answer then? Extraneous. Okay, good. All right, so I've graphed both sides. I see where they cross, and it gives me this combo. How am I supposed to know which one it is? I'll give you a hint. We already knew 5.5. Get what I mean? So the only new information here is that x equals this. And oh, that's right, we put an x in there, right? So we're supposed to be solving for x. So x equals 0.0529. Now let's talk about context to the question. Is that like how much of a lizard I'm going to be able to eat for dinner? No. That's the average rate of inflation up here. Okay, so that's how much cereal was going up over those 5 years. It was 5% a year. To get out 0.05 means about 5%. Does that seem logical that they could be going up, cereal could be going up 5% a year? Good. Can you name something that's actually gone down lately? Oil and gas, yes. And they've gone down a lot. There's a lot of reasons. A lot of people speculate that it was Saudi Arabia's choice because they're very powerful in OPEC to say, we want oil to be cheap. On the surface of it, doesn't make much sense. They pump lots and lots and lots of oil. So why would they want the price to go down? Yes?
They're trying to kick the higher cost producers, like let's say in a lot of Europe and Russia, out of business, so then they'll monopolize the market.
Exactly. Like lately, have you guys heard that North Dakota has been all of a sudden selling lots of oil? They're digging lots of oil out of the ground. They're using this new process called fracking, and which is just it's kind of like there's a lot of dispute around fracking, whether it's bad for the environment or not, and generally it can't be great in that you're pumping water into the ground. We use water for like drinking, and anyway, and there's other chemicals and stuff involved too. So I can see why that would be like an issue, but the point is they're getting lots of oil out of North Dakota, and they didn't used to anymore. I mean, nowadays you get tons of oil there we could get at where we couldn't before. In fact, some people say there's more oil in that area than there is in all of Saudi Arabia. Yes, it's insane. There's so much. It's called the Bakken oil reserves. Anyway, so we have tons of oil there, but the only way we can get it out is this fracking process, which is again, it's definitely more expensive. So here's the problem. The Saudi Arabians say, how can we get those guys to stop pumping oil? Well, if the price of oil were really low, they've already got their wells all paid off. Theirs is all easy oil to get at. So ours is hard to get at and therefore expensive to get at. So if they drive the price of oil way down, our oil companies that are getting the oil out of North Dakota won't be able to make any money and they'll quit. And it's been working. They've already had a drop. Yeah, it's been slowly dropping, but it's now getting worse and worse. It's kind of like, how long can they hold out? It's kind of like a person starving. You know, like you see, it lasts for a while just fine, and then at the end it starts getting pretty bad. So right now, there's more and more companies that are getting close to going out of business. Yes?
Initially, they didn't want to stop pumping oil at the high cost prices here, even though they were losing money pumping oil. The cost to mothball a oil well is incredibly high.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is a complicated answer, but very right. Sounds like you are up on your oil prices. Wow. All right, so bottom line, oil has gone down in price, and probably mostly because the Saudis, who control a lot of the oil, made the decision we want oil to be cheap so that a lot of companies will go out of business, and then we'll be back in charge of oil again, and we'll be able to have high prices again, and they'll make most of the money. That's the idea. So enjoy the cheap oil while you can, because their whole goal, and if they have enough control to make it get cheap, they also have enough control to make it get expensive again, then they are able to control that price of oil so much that down the road they want to be the only ones, well, one of the only ones selling oil, and then they'll make a lot of money again when they crank the price back up again. So that's the whole idea. But my point is that it's not like everything goes up in price. Most things do. And I would expect that some point in your life, when you go to McDonald's, like the cheapest amount of money you can spend at McDonald's will be like $20. Like right now, you can go to McDonald's and have like a dollar, the $1 menu, okay? In the long run, I'm talking about a long time from now, like when you're old, like older than me, there will come a day when you don't go to McDonald's unless you have like 20 bucks, because that'd be the minimum. And like a big full meal at McDonald's might cost you like 60 bucks. I know that seems insane, but I'm telling you, time flies. My dad used to always tell me about nickel Coke. It cost him 5 cents to get a Coke. And nowadays, you go to the gas station, it's like $1.60 is kind of like your smallish size one, and like $2 for a big one. It was a nickel. What's just a factor on that? That's let me think, 40 times as high. So, is it really? Yeah, it used to be a Snickers where you could get like a candy bar for like, well, back in my dad's day, like a dime, like a nickel, and now it's amazing how prices have gone up slowly, and you kind of get used to it. Back then, a teacher would only make like $2,000 per year. Now teachers start at about $30,000 a year. And if that may seem like a lot, but engineers start at about $60,000 a year. Pharmacists started about $100,000 a year. And the thought of anybody making $100,000 back then was like, well, only like super, like the Bill Gates people make $100,000. Now just, like a pharmacist makes that. So anyway, so we're mostly talking about increases here, but I just wanted you to think about how prices sometimes do decrease. All right, let's do this next one and see if you can do it without any help from me. It's just like the last one. You can graph both sides and see where they cross. Or if you want to, you can get the clump, which would be like this part, alone by dividing on both sides by 4.25 and putting it to the power of 1/5. Both ways are good. I just am trying to show you how graph both sides and see where it crosses is an awesome way that'll work for tons of ACT questions in your life. All right, pause while you try number 2. You did on this last one. All right, did you set it up as $2.75 as the start price, and therefore 1 plus the rate, I don't know the rate, for 10 years equals $3.40? Raise your hand if you had it set up right. Good. Then if you graph both sides, y equals $3.40 and y equals all that, you graph both sides and you see where they cross. What did you get? 2.14. Can anybody verify that? 2.14%. Good. If you didn't get that, something was wrong in your equation. That's all I can tell you. Because if you graph both sides and see where they cross, it will come up to 0.021 blah, blah, blah. And you move the decimal over a couple spots and you got 2.14%. Okay. I think feeling like you guys are getting this stuff pretty well. Let's move on. Going on to, this kind of question is really very, very simple. I know they seem complicated because they give you this complicated looking equation, but it's so simple. If they give you the W, the weight, then you stick it here and you graph both sides and see where they cross. If they give you the L, the length, then you stick it there. And then in that case, I wouldn't even probably graph both sides and see where they cross because you've got all the numbers on one side. It's just going to be a number. Multiply them all out and you'll have your answer. Go ahead. All right. So now we're going to just give you the advice that on this problem and the next problem, when they give you an equation like this, you just stick the number in and you decide how to solve it. And my advice is, in general, graph both sides, see where they cross. By the way, when you have fractions like this, I'd put them in parentheses. Way more likely you won't get it wrong. If you have a fraction like in number 5, the botanist's question, put that fraction in parentheses. Otherwise, your calculator is going to think you mean like 5 divided by 3 times a number when you really mean 5/3. So if you want 5/3, put it in parentheses. Say 5/3 parentheses, and then times d, whatever d is. They give you the diameter here, for instance. All right, moving on. Then there's a review section. On the review section, I feel like in our review section that there's so many review problems that you don't really need that many right now. And so for now, what I'm going to do is have you do the even letters. I know that can be a little confusing, but it's B and D and F and H. BDFH. Why don't you just do BDFH? You can handle it. Oh, it's so hard. Anyway, you could just do them all, and then you'd know for sure you'd done the right ones. Anyway, I would recommend the BDFH questions. So the rest of them I would save for later because we have a test coming on Wednesday and Thursday. Why 2 days? One's the no calc, one's the with calc. And it makes it long enough test that we didn't think you could get it done in one day. So Wednesday and Thursday, test day. We got 2 days of review on Monday and Tuesday. So what are we doing tomorrow? More application stuff. So it's pretty easy coast into this next test. So if you're not understanding stuff, take time in the next few days to ask me questions. Yes? You have pretty much learned everything that's going to be on your next test. Yes. And what are the things I've told you to watch out for? Extraneous answers, and they has happened a lot of times when? You got square roots. Okay, what else tell you to watch out for? Plus and minus comes up a lot. And that happens when you do what to both sides? Square root on both sides, yeah. Get the what alone. Get the clump alone is important. You got to be able to solve that kind. How do you get fraction exponents to go away? You put something to the power of its reciprocal. Good. All right, those are some of the main highlights. All right, that's all I have for you for today.